Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Dane, your host. I hope that you are doing great wherever you may find yourselves, and blessings to all of you wonderful people out there. There are quite a few connections between music and television and film. For example, if you're a film or a movie person or a TV person, you might be interested in collecting physical media just like many a music fan is. And in addition to that example, a lot of TV shows are spin-offs from other TV shows, such as The Jeffersons was a spin-off of All in the Family. Frasier was a spin-off and is a spin-off of the TV show Cheers. And it got me thinking. I went to a friend's house the other day who I've not seen in a while. We've pretty much reconnected, and our favorite show in the 90s and perhaps our favorite comedy of all time is Frasier. And it got me thinking, like I said, what a great idea for a video. I could do my favorite spin-off bands from members who left the band and formed their own band or helped form a new band. And some of these spin-off bands that I'm going to mention today, you could argue are what we would call a supergroup. One I'm going to push back and not call it a supergroup, but we'll get there. And I have, I think, 15. These are my favorite spin-off bands of all time. There's no ranking, however, but I do have 5 or 6 or 7 honorable mentions that I would like to mention. So let's go ahead and get started. The first spin-off band is Journey, formed in 1973. This is perhaps by many their magnum opus or the follow-up Frontiers. I would say probably this one is for me. So Neil Schon and Greg Rowley leave Santana. Neil was only on Santana 3. Greg Rowley was on the first 3. They leave and form their own band. And those first 3 albums, which many have dismissed, but I love them to death, are those jazz fusion, is their jazz fusion era, especially the second and the third. The first is more of a hybrid between rock music and that jazz fusion style, because of the 1 or 2 instrumentals, but some of the songs too also have a jazz fusion flair, of course, setting up the second Look Into the Future, and the third album next, or sorry, the other way around, next and then Look Into the Future. One of the quintessential songs in that trilogy of early albums, I think, is Hello Spaceman. I'm Not a Spaceman. Anyway, so the quintessential lineup is, for many of us, depending on your musical point of view, the classic lineup for many of us is Perry, Raleigh, Valerie, Shawn, and Smith. Some will say it's Perry, Jonathan Cain, Valerie, Shawn, and Smith. But either way, whether you're talking about Greg Raleigh or Cain, that era, those two combined, is the classic lineup. You could argue would be your third argument, and I would pretty much agree with you there. In addition to Shawn and Raleigh coming over from Santana, you have Ross Valerie, who comes over from the Steve Miller Band. Also on that first album, you have George Tickner. Before Ainsley Dunbar joins the band for the first album through and including Infinity, you had Prairie Prince from the Tubes involved, but he's not on any of the recordings as far as I know. But yeah, so Journey, great discography from the first album through and including Frontiers, and then Trial by Fire I do like, and a couple songs with Pineda on vocals, but overall, first album through and including Frontiers is where it's at for me. Okay, next is Motorhead, first album 1977, self-titled. Lemmy Kilmister is dismissed from Hawkwind because of some substances they found, and it was weird. It's not so much the substances, but because of the type of substances that he had on him. So he's dismissed from the band, and he forms Motorhead with Larry Wallace, Lucas Fox, and Filthy Animal Taylor. And they do that On Parole album in 1976. Lucas Fox is only on 1 track, but if you get the bonus version of On Parole, he's on 2 or 3 of those bonus tracks. Larry Wallace coming over from the Pink Fairies. You could kind of argue it's 2/3 of a supergroup. You also have the Manticore tapes, also from 1976, where you have the classic lineup of Kilmister, Filthy Animal Taylor, and Eddie Clark doing much of the songs that you find it's a combination of songs that you found on Parole and, of course, the first album. This is the 40th anniversary edition, so it's red and not black. And for me, I'm a Motorhead fan through and through. There are 4 albums I don't like very much, and in those 4 albums, there may be 2 or 3 gems apiece. But yeah, Motorhead is one of my favorite spin-off bands of all time. Has to be for me. The classic lineup of Clark, Kilmister, and Taylor is wonderful. Although I do like Orgasmatron, and everything else up to and including a point. Those 4 albums that I may do a separate video on. And then after those 4 albums, you have some wonderful stuff towards the end before Lemmy's passing, like Inferno, etc. The one after that, Mickey D is a treasure on drums, as are the 2 replacement guitarists who replace Fast Eddie Clarke. So yeah, Motorhead is the On Parole album. I do not own the Manicore tapes. I don't think I'm gonna buy it because even though it's the classic lineup, all the songs found on there can be found on one of these 2. So, all right, next is KK's Priest. Only 2 albums, but what a great 2 albums that is. There are. The Sinner Rides Again is excellent, and this is close to excellent as far as the debut goes. A wonderful, the word I'm looking for, what a wonderful gem of songs that you have from KK and crew. I'm hoping for a new album soon. Is quite a bit of live material that KK's Priest did that you can find on YouTube, and they have the backdrop of the Sad Wings of Destiny cover behind them. It is beautiful, and Tim Ripper Owens really sounds amazing live and on these albums. A live album would be great at this point. So yeah, KK's Priest, one of my favorite spin-off bands of all time. Next is Megadeth. Hardcore Megadeth fans know the story of him seeing that pamphlet on the bus as he's given a ticket. Hetfield and Ulrich say, bye-bye, you're getting on the bus, no more with us. And as tragic as it is, or not tragic, but sad and disappointing and all that kind of thing, heartbreaking, especially for Mustaine. We wouldn't have Megadeth because of that. It's still messed up what they did to him, in my humble opinion. But again, you get a wonderful band in Megadeth, surpassing, with the exception of those first 4 albums of Metallica's, Megadeth surpasses Metallica with respect of being consistent in the thrash metal and heavy metal roots instead of being a hard rock band. Although Megadeth does experiment with a few albums like Risk especially, and Cryptic Writings. But I do like those 2 quite a bit, especially Cryptic Writings. But there's a few wonderful gems on Risk. And overall, the album isn't that bad, in my opinion, or my estimation. But yeah, Megadeth, the first 4 albums are their best, like Metallica's. But the best lineup, in my opinion, my favorite lineup, of course, is Dave Mustaine on vocals, Ellefson on bass, Nick Menza on drums, and Marty Freeman on guitar. And I saw them live for this tour in a small venue. So yes, Megadeth. Next is Rainbow. So Ronnie James Dio leaves Elf, and Ritchie Blackmore leaves Deep Purple because he's become disillusioned with the direction in which the band is going with the last album he's on, which is Stormbringer, which is one of my favorite Deep Purple albums of all time. And Dio's only on the first 3 albums, not counting the live material. Ritchie Blackmore, essentially controls the reins of this band from the beginning to the end, including the last album, the comeback album. Not really much of a comeback in the sense that it's good, but a comeback in other words that they put out a new album with Doogie something on vocals. And I have the live album with him on vocals, I believe. I think it's him on vocals, but not a great vocalist, but a good vocalist. Just doesn't have the Rainbow feel. But I do like the Joe Lynn Turner era of Rainbow more and more as I get older. I've always liked Straight Between the Eyes, and I've liked the one with the Doctors on the cover, which was supposed to be a Black Sabbath cover for Never Say Die. Difficult to Cure. And lately I've warmed up. I've always liked much of the songs on Bent Out of Shape, but I've even more warmed up to that album in the last 4 years of my life as I'm getting older. So yeah, Rainbow definitely, and Rising is great. Their best album, magnum opus. Next is Whitesnake, another spin-off band from Deep Purple. You have 3/5 of Deep Purple in the band at some point in the discography. You have Coverdale on vocals, of course. You have Ian Pace on drums, and the wonderful John Lord on Hammond organ and other keys. This is their debut. This includes the Snakebit EP, which has Come On, Bloody Mary, Steal Away, and the studio version of Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City, and of course, produced by Martin the Wasp Birch. So yes, Whitesnake, continuing in the vein of Deep Purple, the early stuff. The best era of Whitesnake is the first album through and including Slip of the Tongue, perhaps ending with Whitesnake 87, but I do like Slip of the Tongue. Yes, but it all starts here, and continuing, as I said, in the vein of the Mark III era of Deep Purple with such a soulful, bluesy type. The combination of soulful and bluesy vocals from Coverdale is just wonderful. And it's too bad he didn't get the job with Uriah Heep, but we wouldn't have had Whitesnake, so perhaps. All right, next is ELO. Jeff Lynne, Bev Bevan, and Roy Wood come over from The Move, form Electric Light Orchestra. Roy Wood only stays for 1 or 2 albums and then leaves and does his own solo thing. Either this or the double album is my favorite. I'm on the fence about Many Days It's This because of nostalgia with respect to my mom loving this album and she buying it for me. I come home from school and it's on my pillow as she was wont to do. So ELO coming over, forming a Jeff Lynne and crew, forming the band from The Move. Next is Led Zeppelin. The Yardbirds, we all know the story. Jimmy originally was going to name what became Led Zeppelin the New Yardbirds. And because of Keith Moon's comment about that's going to go over like a lead balloon, the name Led Zeppelin, the moniker, was born. And thank goodness there's a live album, I don't think it's in print anymore, where we begin to hear what Jimmy is interested, that light and shade, that dark and mysterious and magus type wizardry with the guitar stuff going on. The live album has a rough version of what's going to eventually be Dazed and Confused. I don't know if it's called that, but I can't remember the name of the Yardbirds album. I want to get it, but I'm drawing a blank here. And of course, the debut, the wonderful debut, one of the best debuts of all time. And of course, for me personally, I like everything in the discography, including In Through the Outdoor and Coda, the 2 weakest albums in the discography, but still worth having and very good albums in my estimation. And here's where I talk about I don't think Led Zeppelin is a supergroup. Here's why. For me, in my personal definition of a supergroup is that all members in the band have to have come from noteworthy bands. You have 2 or word of mouth type musicians, right? So Jimmy Page, the Yardbirds, Jimmy Page, the session musician as well, being on a plethora of people's albums like the Kinks, etc. And then John Paul Jones, before being in Led Zeppelin, was a famous session musician in his own right. Perhaps not as popular as Page. However, Plant and Bonham come over from Band of Joy. Band of Joy, not much with respect to material out there. I don't even think they have an official studio album. And the time that Plant and Bonham spent together in Band of Joy was at least no more than a year, from 67 to 68, and then you have other members coming in and out. So to me, Led Zeppelin is not a supergroup. Are they super? Absolutely not a supergroup. But regardless, Led Zeppelin, one of my favorite spin-off bands of all time from the Yardbirds. Next is Fleetwood Mac, a spin-off from John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, if you talk about their second album where Peter Green is involved. And so you have Peter Green and John McVie coming over from John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. John McVie's on the first album as well. This is their magnum opus, if you ask me. I do like the Buckingham Nicks rendition of Fleetwood Mac, but this is where it's at for me, especially this album. Their best song for me is the Green Man and Lassie. Is Oh Well Parts 1 and 2. Wonderful acoustic stuff, and then you have that. It's not called this, but it makes me think of, I forget who else has this, the band Mountain. Anyway, the acoustic epic track of Oh Well 1 and 2, heavy at first, but then the rest of the song is this theme to an imaginary Western type piece. It's wonderful, it's beautiful, it gives me goosebumps every time. And of course, the Green Man and Lassie is even more, even though I like the Judas Priest version more because it's heavier, the Green Man and Lassie version here is even creepier because of the delivery that Peter Green gives. This is a wonderful album. Fleetwood Mac's first album, through and including up to when Peter Green leaves, is where it's at for me, my favorite Fleetwood Mac era. So Fleetwood Mac, Peter Green, and John McVie coming over from John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. Next is Cream, because of Eric Clapton leaving the Yardbirds and having Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce together in this wonderful trio. Pop and rock and proto-metal, if you will. So yes, Cream, a short catalog, but a good catalog. Next is Uriah Heep. Now this is an interesting spin-off band because the spin-offs that they're, the bands that they're coming from are like not very famous, but it's still a spin-off band nonetheless. So we have Mick Box and David Garrick, a.k.a. David Byron, coming over from the band Spice, fusing with Paul Newton on bass from the Gods with an S, not the Z version of the Gods. And then, of course, Hensley coming over from Tofat, who was also in the Gods, to form Uriah Heep. And what a great, one of my favorite bands of all time in my top 10. This album, through and including Abominog, with the exception of Conquest, is where it's at. So have to include Uriah Heep here. Next is Badlands. 3 albums only, a trilogy. The first album is it's an 11 out of 10 for me. The second album, I would say an 8 out of 10. The third album is like a 6 out of 10. It's not very good, but it's got some good tracks on it. And it's not in print, unfortunately. And of course, Jakey Lee coming over from Ozzy and the wonderful Ray Gillen on vocals. Quick sidebar here: I have not included Ozzy and Dio here because, to me, they're really solo artists, even though you have Dio as, the name and it's the name of the band, but it's still, he's the one in control and that kind of thing. And had Ozzy stuck with the Blizzard of Oz moniker, then I might have included them here. But he's a solo artist, Dio's a solo artist, so we're talking about bands, spin-off bands, if you will. Next, I forgot to pull out a CD for this band, but High on Fire, 1998, Matt Pike coming over from Sleep. And what a wonderful discography. 9 or 10 albums. That new album is wonderful. I hope they do something soon again. How many bands can you name where every album in their discography is excellent? The wonderful band Bad Company, almost a supergroup in their own right, but not fully a supergroup because only 3/4 of the members are from well-known bands. Mick Ralphs from Mott the Hoople, Paul Rodgers from Free, and Boz Burrow from King Crimson. They have 12 studio albums. It's only the first 6 that I like. This is the original lineup, and that first album is their best. The first 2 are the best, but that first one is even better than the second. But no sophomore slump with Straight Shooter. The first album, to me, is the greatest hits. Great from start to finish, ending with a beautiful and lovely seagull. Straight Shooter has 2 hits off the album, but the whole album is great from start to finish, I think, as well. Run with the Pack and Burning Sky are very good, not great. Same goes for Rough Diamonds. Of the 6 original albums, the original lineup, Rough Diamonds is my least favorite, but there's some wonderful gems or diamonds in the rough, if you don't mind the pun there. Even a song or 2 making its way onto the Supernatural TV show. I forget which songs. And Desolation Angels, I think, is quite good with the wonderful hit Rock and Roll Fantasy. I think that's a fabulous song. So yeah, I have to include this band. And it's too bad they didn't last a little longer with the original lineup. But it is what it is. So there you have it. So, and finally, before I get to my honorable mentions, is Eagles. Glenn Frey, Don Henley, Randy Meisner, and Bernie Leadon coming over from Linda Ronstadt's band. They play on Linda Ronstadt's 4th or 5th album, which is her self-titled Linda Ronstadt. And I guess Eagles is one of those bands that is a guilty pleasure of mine, and I have my dad to thank for my love of this band. I've not talked about them until now on this channel. I don't own anything on CD by them. Everything I had on them was on vinyl at one point. I have everything from them up to and including Hell Freezes Over, but anything after that with Vince Gill, no thank you. But I have everything on MP3. So yeah, I have to include the Eagles. I like this country style of pop and rock, so it's a guilty pleasure of mine. Finally, we have my honorable mentions. Fast Eddie Clarke coming over to do his own thing, leaving Motorhead because he didn't like Lemmy doing Stand By Your Man, is the story we told for him leaving. Who knows? It's called Fastway because it was supposed to be Fast Eddie Clarke and Pete Way, but Pete Way couldn't get his visa in order. This happens with him so many times. So he goes on to do his own offshoot from Motorhead. So the next honorable mention is Wasted, coming over from UFO, doing his own thing with his lineup. Next is Sugar, Bob Mould, separating from the punk band Husker Du. And Sugar has a wonderful album. There's 2 or 3, like Copper Blue, and Beaster is the one I really like, that EP. Copper Blue is amazing. Beaster even more, incredibly so. More of a heavy punk, heavy new wave type / punk, heavy punk. If you hardcore punk meets new wave type music, it's very good. And these next 3 bands, my last 3 honorable mentions, are all related together, not just because they're grunge bands, but because they have all connection with respect to rotating members, as you'll see in a second. So the first band to mention is Mudhoney. You have Mark Arm and Steve Turner coming over from Green River. They were both in Green River. Green River dissolves, and so Arm and Turner form Mudhoney. And then in a similar vein, you have Mother Love Bone, a spinoff from Green River. Jeff Ament and Stone Gossard coming over from Green River. And then finally, Pearl Jam, because Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament come over from, Pearl Jam, the first album, is where it's at for me. Let me correct myself. Stone Gossard coming over from Green River, and Mother Love Bone, and Jeff Ament coming over from Mother Love Bone to form Pearl Jam with Eddie Vedder and crew. So again, Fastway, Wasted, Sugar, Mudhoney, Pearl Jam, and Mother Love Bone are my honorable mentions. I only like the first Pearl Jam album and a couple songs on the second, maybe 2 songs on Vitology, and that's pretty much it for me. I like the first Mother Love Bone album, Apple, very much. And then Mudhoney, I like everything by Mudhoney, especially their first 2 albums, but their last album or so, perhaps their last good album was Every Good Boy Deserves Fudge, perhaps. But anyway, there you have it, folks. Post in the comments if you like, what are your favorite spin-off bands. Take care. See you next time. Bye now.